Welcome to Shore Perspectives, a community feature of WESR Radio, highlighting the spirit of the shore from those who call it home.
Tom Kellam. I live in Exmoor, and metal detecting is supposed to be relaxing, enjoyable. When you put your headphones on, you really can take you away from your troubles. I used to do a lot of flying, and I remember I used to love to go flying by myself because you take yourself away from your troubles. You look down, they no longer bothered you. I received a fairly serious injury when I was in the service, and one of the things that the doctors have always told me, exercise, walk, do whatever you can until you can't do it anymore. Well, for 30 years, I was a quail hunter. I would walk behind bird dogs, which I love. But for those of you who know anything about quail hunting, there's just not any quail anymore. So God gave this to me, this hobby, that will keep me off the sofa. It will help me preserve history, particularly local history. It will maybe give me an opportunity to find relics that are associated with my family, and way back for family that is past and gone. And when I'm not on our property, I do the same thing for others. I wouldn't sell a thing I had, but I'd give away everything I had. Just the other day, we were on the property of the Savage Brothers down the road named Cherrystone. My hunting partner and myself, Bill Dias, we both fixed up a display of relics that we had found on their property. Anything, I mean, it didn't have to be anything expensive, but we found like spoons and old coins and things of this nature. And then we would put that and we gave them to him. And old George, I think I saw a little tear in his eye. He was so moved that these came off his property that I'm assuming that he grew up on. But when you go out there, you want to be sure, so always get permission. You get in the habit, no matter where you're detected, be it in the woods, where nobody's likely to step in there for a year, or if in a field that you know is going to be plowed the next day. As is automatic as breathing, whenever I dig a plug, the first thing I do after I retrieve my relic is take my right foot, because I've worn out my left one by doing it, and slide the soil back in as well as you can, and even tap it. If you're in somebody's yard, it's particularly important that you dig a plug. You'll learn how to do all this, but when you dig a plug, you just roll it up like it's a hinge on a door. Find your target, maybe in a plug, it may be in a hole, but whatever it is, once you get it, you just roll the plug back in, and then it grows just like ever. Of course, you can't stop grass from growing, but you won't grow unless you put it back in place. And I've even had people that have detected it. I always usually go alone. My wife got a little upset about that because I'd be back in the middle of the woods all day long. And for most high-end detectors, you can't have a cell phone on. It will interfere with it of some sort, even by sound or maybe even with detection. So I'll take my phone with me, but I don't have it on. And, sometimes when your loved one's trying to get hold of you in the middle of the woods. So, but I have got a hunting partner now that I enjoy hunting with, and everybody brings something to the table, right? And this gentleman is a knack for researching old maps and white laws and so forth. So the knowledge that I always took for granted on our farms, Bill is able to do this research, and then we'll contact the landowners, and then when we get there, we're not stumbling around, but where do we go? And then you go. One of the first things that you want to do when you go to a new site, even if you know around about where the old home sites were, because remember, some of them are maybe even close to 300 years old, because we were settled in about the 1620s over here, or maybe a little bit later, is look for bricks, little pieces of bricks and pottery. And you can do that even without researching. If you're on a new site and it's a field, just walk around it. And whenever you see little pieces of old brick, I'm talking about the old brick that kind of crumble in your hand, and old pieces of pottery. And if you know anything about pottery, then you can take that pottery and date your site. if you're looking for Civil War and everything you're finding is, 1920s, then, you might want to move on. But that is a wise thing to do. It's a lot of narrowing down. A lot of homework should be done. And by all means, you got to make sure it's okay with the landowner. And when you talk to the landowner, I always ask them, now, if we find anything, it's yours, if you want it. I've never had any of them say, okay, everything you get, I want. Most of them will say, just let me see what you find. And I remember at one landowner, I found one of those bullets I was talking about, and something else that's very rare. 1817 large cent. And the landowner would always come and check on us once or twice a day. And he'd come out, he was coming out, and I just found those two items. And I thought to myself, oh no, I know he's going to want those. But I had to show him. And I went up and showed him, and he looked at him and says, oh, I got 100 of those. Of course, he didn't know it was one of those special bullets. But you see, God will make it work out for you. It always works out. And even if he wanted everything, it wouldn't make any difference, because I have my pictures and I have my memories and I have the exercise, So I would, again, I didn't think that I would get to this stage, but I was at the point now that my detecting partner and myself are trying to think about ways to bring new people, young people particularly, into this hobby. It'll keep you away from other activities that maybe aren't as desirable. And it gives you purpose, and you're also being an individual, because it's kind of a competition thing. But at the same time, it's like you get away from things. You put on the earphones, because all my finds are by sound. And once you learn your detectors, you'll learn by sound. And speaking of that, I use XP DAS, and that's one of the lightest and probably one of the best detectors I've ever used in my life. I've also I have an Equinox 800, which is an excellent machine, but it's just a little heavy for an old man. And I have 2 or 3 Garretts that I've used over the years, but I started on an Ace 300, and I used that for a year. It was one of the best detectors for the money and to learn on. Because if you don't program your detectors correctly, and what I mean by that, once you start detecting, you'll see that there's certain sounds and certain things. You can block certain signals out, so you're not digging trash all day long, or you determine a certain unwanted item is a certain number. You'll understand that tone, you'll pass it by. Time is of essence here, because if you don't have to stop what you're doing, dig a hole unnecessarily, an old man like me won't be as tired out, and you don't have to dig up the yard as much or dig up the woods as much. So you'll get to learn that. So you'll see most old timers saying the hardest thing to learn was not digging a signal, but learning to pass by a signal. Because youngsters, or when I first started, I wanted to dig everything. And I had more aluminum cans and slick can slaw than you could fill up a bushel basket with in a day. So it's an art. And I've had a number of hobbies in my life, but everything I do, I want to do it the very best I can. And detecting is unlimited resources.
For Shore Perspectives and WESR Radio, I'm Kelley Gaskell.